Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Well, today I'm heading down to Oxfordshire for quite an interesting little trip, and I'm taking this, my 2002 Range Rover Vogue. More specifically, this is the L322 Range Rover, which ran from 2002 all the way until 2012. This particular one I've owned for about a year now. I paid £1,250 for it. It comes with BMW's awesome 4.4 litre V8. It sounds very good. It's not great on fuel, but we won't dwell on that. And this is the Vogue spec. Excuse me, let me just close my sunroof because it's quite windy up here today. This is the Vogue spec, so it comes with absolutely everything. It's still a nice car now, 22 years later, but in its day, this must have been something else. The L322 Range Rover is a car with a cult following, and for good reason. So I thought today, I'll tell you all about the history of what is my favourite era of Range Rover. Let's get started. The L322 Range Rover was produced from 2002 until 2012, and it marked a significant milestone in the evolution of the iconic Range Rover brand. Before the L322, the Range Rover was the P38, which ran from late 1994 until 2002, and it wasn't the most popular car. It was infamously unreliable, and lots of people likened it to a metro cab. In fairness, I always liked the P38, but then again I am a little bit weird. In the late 1990s, Land Rover, who were then under BMW ownership, began development of a brand new Range Rover model to replace the aging P38. The L322, known internally as Project L30, aimed to blend the brand's renowned off-road prowess with modern luxury and technology. The main target audience was the North American market, so they made the car even bigger, with even more space inside. L322 prototypes underwent rigorous testing in extreme conditions all around the world, from the scorching deserts of Africa to frigid Arctic landscapes. This extensive testing ensured the L322 would uphold the Range Rover legacy of unmatched durability and capability. It really is a go-anywhere vehicle. It's a bit of a cliche to say this, but the L322 Range Rover looks just as right pulling up outside the Dorchester as it does driving through the Serengeti. In 2002, the L322 Range Rover made its debut, showcasing a revolutionary design. It featured an aluminium monocoque chassis for improved rigidity and weight savings, and it had an advanced air suspension system which provided exceptional comfort on and off-road. You could raise the ride height massively so it could conquer anything. Most L322s here in the UK came out on a 2002 02 plate, but I have seen a few on a 51. I remember they featured one in the James Bond film Die Another Day back in 2002, a very early example on a 51. That particular car is still on the road because last time I watched that film, yes, I did reg check it. If you think about buying an L322 Range Rover, it's really important that you do a vehicle history check. Now, I always use a company called Car Vertical. If you want to do one of these checks for yourself, and I urge you to do so before you hand over any cash for a used car or motorbike, then you can save yourself 20% off each and every check if you use my promo code HIGHPEAK. That's HIGHPEAK all one word, or alternatively, click the link below in the video description. But it's really easy to use, so all you do is go to carvertical.com, type in the vehicle reg or the VIN. Now in this case, I'll just show you on my car. So we type in Kilo Romeo 52 Whiskey Golf Victor, and then check vehicle. What this does is gathers data from 35 different countries, so it isn't just a UK thing. So if, for example, this has had a bump in Belgium or an accident in Andorra, this will tell us. It only takes a couple of minutes and it only costs the same price as a round of drinks in the pub. And it just means that you won't buy a car that's got a dodgy past. So for example, this will tell us if it's ever been stolen, written off, had a mileage rollback or has outstanding finance on it. Right, and just like that, the report's ready. So, view report. So as you can see here, it's never had a mileage rollback. It's done 142 right now. There's no outstanding finance and there's no recorded accident damage. If we scroll down a bit further, it gives you a brief write-up about the car, and then we discover it's never been stolen. Now, quite a few cars are stolen and then recovered. Now, I don't know if I'd be too put off by that, to be honest, as long as it's not still wanted now. As long as it's stolen, recovered, and then that marker gets lifted off, I wouldn't be too put off. In addition to that, we've got all the previous MOT history, so you can see here that that mileage is genuine. If we scroll down a bit further, it gives you the market value, so the average market price for such a vehicle is £5,000. Then we've got all the MOT history. So it's just really good. It means that you can go into a car purchase and you've got all the information there at your fingertips. So don't forget to use my promo code HIGHPEAK for 20% off each and every check. It's not just a one-time thing, you can do as many as you like. So cheers Car Vertical for sponsoring today's video. The launch of the L322 Range Rover was met with widespread acclaim from automotive journalists and enthusiasts alike. Its blend of luxurious amenities, cutting-edge technology and uncompromising off-road capability set a new standard in the luxury SUV segment. Under its decade-long production run, the L322 had several facelifts. So the first model ran from 2002 until late 2005, and that is exactly what you're looking at here. So it had this rectangle grille like this, it had separate indicators, the masking tape was optional, and also these side grills have two vertical stripes. The facelift from 2005 onwards, 2005 to 2009, that had three vertical stripes, and also the grille changed. On that first facelift model, the headlamps and indicators were all one unit, and they went sort of semicircle into the grille like that. In addition to that, it also received some new engines. So they did away with the old 4.4 litre V8 and the 3 litre TD6. They replaced the diesel with a 3.6 turbo diesel V8, which I think was from Ford, and also they replaced this BMW petrol with one from Jaguar. Also, for the first time, you could buy it with a 4.2 litre supercharged Jag engine. Now that was quite a car in its day because it produced 400 horsepower. In addition to the changes with the front lights, the rear lights changed. So, as you can see here, we've got this amber light up top. That was replaced with a clear lens. And the supercharged model was different still. They had like a blue tint to them. And also the supercharged model, the 4.2, had twin exhaust pipes. One thing I always found lacking from the pre-facelift L322 was the cup holder situation. So here, you've got this very elaborate one here which pops out, which I'm amazed hasn't broken, to be honest, because it is quite fiddly and flimsy. So that's one. And the second one is over there for the passenger. Now on the facelift model from late 2005 to 2009, they changed the interior layout. So they moved the ignition barrel from here and put it up here on the dash, which meant you freed up some more space here. They moved the gear selector over slightly, which gave you two cup holders, which was just a much more intelligent design. This sounds really nerdy now, but I've always loved the design of the steering wheel. It's a nice thin steering wheel. I don't really like chunky wheels. I also love the slender horn buttons. It's just aged really well. I'm a big fan of late 90s, early 2000s BMWs, and you can see lots of that technology in here. Take, for example, this button here for the sunroof. It looks like something you'd find in an E38 7 Series. I'm not sure it is, by the way, but it looks very similar. You can certainly tell that they've shared the same parts bin. If not, they've certainly shared the same designers. Continuous refinement and improvement were key to the L322's success. Every tweak they made just kept it up to date. It kept it modern and current. Over the years, Land Rover engineers listened to customer feedback and incorporated new technology and design elements to keep the vehicle competitive in an ever-evolving market. If you're a long-term viewer of the channel, you'll know that I love these cars. The L322 and I go way back. I was just 12 years old when this car came out, and I still, to this day, remember the first one I ever saw. It was in the village where I was living at the time, near the railway pub, and it was just driving over the bridge. I thought, I didn't really know what it was, to be honest, because I was into cars, but I wasn't that into them. I didn't know that there was a new Range Rover coming out, so I was used to seeing the P38. The one I saw all those years ago was a silver Vogue. I just couldn't get it out of my head. I knew one day I'd own one. Many years later, when I was living in Spain, they were everywhere. I still couldn't drive at that point, I was only a teenager, but I always wanted one. I always lusted after one. Then finally, back in 2014, I bought my very first Vogue. It was a 3 litre TD6 Vogue spec, in Santorini black, with a black leather interior, and I loved it. I only kept it for about a year, to be honest, because if I'm honest with myself, I couldn't really afford it. I was a jobbing actor at the time, so I was doing lots of trips to London, and it would take £120 to fill the tank, and it would only get me there and back. Now the TD6 engine is an old BMW engine, and it gets a lot of stick, mostly from me, to be honest, but they're not that bad. They even make quite a nice noise for a diesel, but they were always a little bit underpowered, and they were mated to an old General Motors gearbox, which wasn't particularly reliable. So that was the first L322 Range Rover that I actually owned, and I absolutely loved it. I did about 10,000 miles with it over the year, and never really had any serious issues. There were a few minor issues with the air suspension. Obviously, it's an old Range Rover, but nothing too serious. I remember one time I was down in London, and I'd met up with my mate Dan, who was over from Australia, and I was taking him back up to Manchester. So I'd left my car at the train station, jumped in it, feeling all proud of myself that I was in a nice Range Rover, and it just wouldn't lift up. It was in its, very bottom position. So I drove all the way back up to Manchester, feeling every bump, being literally looked down on by people in Qashqai's. That happened probably 2 or 3 times, but then you turn it off and back on again, and it was right as rain. And then since then, I've had dozens of them. I can't even remember, I've lost track. I've never had another TD6, I moved on from that and went to the TD-V8s, and then I've had the Supercharge, I've had the standard 4.4s, all sorts. I just think they're great cars and they deserve the cult following that they're now getting. People are realising that it's 1, a cheap way into Range Rover ownership, but 2, it's definitely going to be a future classic, if it's not already. Especially one like this, a pre-facelift. They look nicely old, to be honest, if that makes any sense. Now I think Range Rovers are best when they're in their original form. So clear glass, original wheels, original grille, no chrome whatsoever. You need to keep them nice and original. That way it kind of looks like an old money car. It just looks classy. Not that I've got anything to prove, to be honest. My other car's a 2018 Range Rover, and my other car's an old Citroen Berlingo. I couldn't care less what people think. But I swear with this kind of car, nobody knows it was 1,200 quid. Nobody knows that I'm a used car dealer from Stockport. I could be anybody. and I quite like that. If you compare this to some other cars which also have a cult following, like the Defender, this just looks like the bargain of the century. For example, if I were to buy a 2002 Defender with 140,000 miles on the clock, I'd have to spend around 15 grand. I could get 10 of these. 10. And with the Range Rover, I don't get a sore leg from operating the clutch. I can still see perfectly all around me. I get a heated steering wheel, heated seats, sunroof. You don't get that in an old Defender. One of the nicest ones I've had in recent years was my 2006 in Giverny Green. That had the 4.4 litre Jaguar engine, which is a more reliable engine than this BMW unit, for sure. But I don't really regret it. I don't regret selling it. I don't really miss it. I think that's because I've still got this one. And to tell you the truth, this engine makes a nicer noise, and it feels more responsive. And I think that's because this has got the 5-speed gearbox, not the later 6, as was featured in the 4.4 Jaguar unit. So this just feels a bit quicker, even though it has 30 fewer horses. I was going to sell this one as well because I don't really use it, but then I thought for £1,200, granted it owes me a little bit more than that because I have spent on it, but for £1,200, what's the point? I may as well just keep it. I think I'll always have an L322 in my life, forever. In addition to them being a luxury car, which it obviously is, it's also one of the most practical cars money can buy. I love the fact that you get that Range Rover signature split tailgate. I've sat on the back of this one and had my lunch many a time. I love the fact that you can just drop the seats and go and do a dump run, or go to IKEA, all that sort of stuff. There is just no end to its uses. Yes, it only does 20 miles per gallon, but you can't have it all ways, can you? What's good as well is that because there are so many of them out there, spare parts just aren't an issue. I need to find actually a new front indicator for this one, because as you can tell, it's currently being held together by masking tape. I haven't had a look yet, but I imagine on eBay there'll be about 50 million of them, and it'll cost me 25 quid. It's quite an easy thing to keep on the road. And I don't want to sound wasteful now, but for 1,200 quid, it's almost a disposable car. If something catastrophic happens, which, touch wood, you know, I hope it doesn't, I'd just get rid of it. I'd get 300 or 400 quid back in scrap, or 500 quid back in parts. It's the most sort of stress-free way of owning a Range Rover. I have been tempted to buy a facelift 3.6 diesel and put chunky tyres on it and a roof rack and all that sort of stuff and make it a bit of an expedition vehicle, but I don't really know where I want to go. But still, it's something I might do in the future. And there aren't many older cars that I'd like to do that with. Because I've had dozens of these over the years, every single time I get in one, everything's just so familiar. I know where everything is. I love the sound of the doors slamming shut, for example. You get that BMW clunk. I love all the buttons and switches. It's all been really intelligently and thoughtfully designed. You know what it's like for me getting into one of these cars? It's like going to your favourite pub and getting your favourite seat. Everything just feels right in the world. This early BMW 4.4 V8 produces 272 horsepower, and it still feels nice and punchy. Listen to that as well. It does sound lovely. You get heated front and rear seats, air suspension, powerful mirrors, a heated windscreen, a sunroof, all sorts of stuff. They're just really nice cars to live with. They slot into everyone's lifestyle very easily. Like now, for example, I've got to go into the city centre and meet a friend for lunch, and I was planning to go back to my L405 and jump into that and leave this there. But, well, I'm running a little bit late, but I'll just take this instead. It'll fit into the city perfectly. In fact, I'll try and get a nice shot for my Instagram as well. It's just the perfect car for the city, the countryside, or if you want to go on a European road trip. The L322 Range Rover left an indelible mark on the automotive industry. It set new standards for luxury SUVs. Its combination of off-road capability, luxury and advanced technology paved the way for future generations of Range Rover models. The model that replaced the L322 was the L405, which I've always maintained is a better luxury car. But the L322, in my opinion, is a better Range Rover. It's more of a workhorse. It's more of a go-anywhere vehicle. Even today, 22 years after it was launched, the L322 still continues to be revered by collectors and enthusiasts worldwide. And I can see the appeal, obviously. I mean, I'm one of the biggest fans. It's just such a timeless design, and I know it will rightly take its place in automotive history as one of the most iconic SUVs ever made. And that brings me on to my trip to Oxfordshire. I don't really want to spoil it, but there's going to be a convoy of around 40 other L322s, all from different eras, and I can't wait. I'm looking forward to meeting the owners and having a chat about their own experiences and what's gone wrong and what they like about it and all that sort of stuff. So I really hope you enjoy that video because I know I'm going to love making it. And also, obviously, I hope you've enjoyed this one. I hope you enjoy them all. So if you have, make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and TikTok. I'll leave the link below. And yeah, cheers guys. I'll see you next time.